everybody, thank you for joining me today. Today I thought I would take a moment to address how I did my background layouts, or my background for my August layouts. I did include it in the video of my August bullet journal setup, but I thought I would take it out and do it separately just so that you could have it for easy reference if this is something you decide to do. It's a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite techniques to use. For this example, I did my backgrounds with my inks and I actually used acrylograph over top, and it was really great because it is not opaque at all. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Okay, so I mentioned in my video that I use the Distress inks. You get Distress ink and Distress oxide. The formulas are a little bit different between the two, and they actually react with each other in a really interesting way. So that's definitely something you can try out. But I will say that getting the Distress inks, you get these in a pack of 4, and it's a little bit more affordable than buying 4 of the Distress oxides. So if this is something you want to experiment with and play with, I do recommend getting the pack of 4, just of the little ones. I will do a disclaimer on that. The Distress ink is harder to blend than the Distress oxide. So you're going to have to put a little bit more elbow grease into your blending if you're using the Distress ink. But if it's something you're just experimenting with, then definitely go this route. If you experiment and you like it, then I strongly suggest the Distress oxide, since it's just so much easier and so much quicker to blend with. And I'll show you the difference between the two. Then the other tool you're going to need is the mini blender. You get the blender with that has the round foam head. I don't have that one since I have basically stocked up on these guys. So I wanted to use these before I tried something different. And so it's just the mini dabber, and then you have your little sponge. You just stick it on like that, and I will show you where we go from there. My other favorite thing to use are these stencils. So this is the stencil I used for my August layout. You can see I haven't cleaned it, but it was a lot of fun to put together and to use. And this is actually probably one of my favorite stencils. And the fun part is you can also layer stencils as well. So I pulled some stencils out that we can use for layering. These are Tim Holtz, as you can see. This is Dylusions. I have a EBGB stencil, and then this is a Ellie Edwards stencil. So I have stencils from everywhere. Tim Holtz, I buy them on sale on scrapbook.com, and then they are just a lot more affordable, but there are a lot of other fun stencil companies as well. So I'm going to show you how to create the background, and then we're going to throw in the stencils with a layering effect so that you can check that out. Okay, so just like with any supply you have, your paper quality is going to matter. I'm using an Archer and Olive 160 GSM. The paper is really smooth, so the inks actually go on quite easily. The smoother your paper, the easier the ink's going to go on, spread onto it. If you're using a coated paper, you're going to want to wait for it to dry. Otherwise, you're going to get finger marks in it, because I've definitely done that before. So just keep that in mind. This isn't a neat and tidy experiment either. But again, paper quality is going to make a difference. So I'm going to start off showing you the Distress ink, which is the Picked Raspberry. And I'm going to show you how challenging it can be. So if you put it straight down like that, you're going to get that circle dab, which is not quite what you see I've done for the smoothness in my background. And I'll leave that out there so you can keep that there to reference. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to keep going back in and just spreading out that circle. And as you can see, I'm just layering the color on just to kind of get rid of that circle. So after the first layer of ink for the Distress ink, the rest of it actually goes on pretty easily. So just keep that in mind. You just have to get the first layer down, and then you can go back in and even it out. And that's what I did in my shark layer. I did my first layer, added bits, pieces in, went in, back in, blended it out. And so it's just a lot of back and forth blending to get the effect that you want. The other thing you can do too is you can dab it down, take an extra piece of paper and just lightly get rid of some of the ink, just so that you don't have that splotchy round sponge. And I wouldn't recommend, do that when you're going in to refine your colors, not so much when you're doing your first layer, because that'll take forever. So now I'm going to use the Distress Oxide for you, and you can kind of see the difference. So right away, the Distress Oxide, it's easier to blend. Okay, so there's your Distress Oxide. It's a lot softer color, which is what you see reflected in my shark layout, versus this is a lot more vivid, and it's not got that softer pastel-y effect. And again, like I said, it's just a lot of back and forth to get the color that you want. So that is the basic difference between the two. Again, you're going to want to just a little bit more elbow grease if you're using the Distress Ink Oxides. The Distress Inks. I've used the Distress Inks. I've only recently purchased the Distress Ink Oxides, so a lot of the examples I'm going to show you is with the Distress Inks, so you don't have to worry too much about running out and buying the expensive the oxide inks if you want to do that. So there you go. Okay, so then I wanted to show you layering with the stencils. So let me just get something going here for you. Okay, so this is the Tumbled Glass, which is the base color that I used in my shark layout. And we're just going to go in and create a bit of a background. The sponge I'm using is actually a little bit dirty. Okay, so that's a bit of a background I created. Now I'm going to take the star stencils and we're going to do some layering. Now the fun part about these Distress Oxides is that you can layer over top of them as well. So you just have to go in and just add layer upon layer upon layer. And you're going to see that it kind of creates a bit of a watermark effect, which is really fun. So there you can see the watermark effect, which is really, really fun. Then we can go in with a darker color. And so that's kind of the cool, I don't know if you can still see that blue and how that blue is reacting, but it's there. And that's how you can kind of create that cool layered effect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a full background for you so that you can get a better idea of how to use these inks and how much fun they can be. Before we do that, I did quickly want to show you how the oxide and the ink kind of can work together, and it's just really fun. So we're going to take another stencil. So that's kind of how the two work together. So if you do buy the inks and decide that you want to get the oxides, you can definitely use them together, and then you get the super cool effect when they start interacting with each other. So I don't know if you can tell the difference between the oxide on the oxide or the ink on the oxide, but there's a lot more fun going on here. So if you do get the inks and then get the oxides or vice versa, it's still fun to play with either way. So now we're going to move on to creating a full background. You just keep layering over top of the inks. You keep going back and forth, switching out your sponges and just making sure that you're getting a blend in. And that's how you can take something that looks messy and all over the place like this and turn it into something more like this. Now I'm just going to wait for this to dry a little bit longer, and then we're going to start adding some detailing in so that you can get a better idea of what you can do. So I only have my white pigment ink. Pigment ink is going to work with this as well because it doesn't dry as quickly as the dye ink, so you're able to blend in. I like the distress inks because I like the effect that they give. I don't have the white soot or the white picket fence distress ink. I don't know why. We're just going to go in and just tap in some color. And there you go. There is a fun galaxy effect taking this to this. And again, it's just layering and blending and using your imagination and adding whatever elements you want. So thank you so much for watching today. I'm going to do a flip through of previous layouts that I've done using the distress inks for inspiration for you. And if you do recreate any of my layouts, please tag me. I'd love to see how you use them and how you created with them. But thank you so much for watching today. So for this layout, the paper is orange and I laid it over top with 2 different colored red inks, and then this is a rose stencil. And then I went in with a fine liner and I just added some detailing on, as well as some white gel pen to add some detailing as well. For this layout, the page is blue. So I actually grabbed the stencil in 2 different colored blue inks and gave this really cool blurred vision effect, which I actually ended up really liking a lot. And then this was another example I wanted to share with you. This I layered 2 stencils. I used the stencil and the copy stain stencil, which is really fun. And again, the paper was white, so I put a layer of brown down, and then I went in with 2 different color browns to create this. And this I stamped down, so I just did the blending around it. So this is actually one of my favorite techniques to use, and I did use it in the August layout as well. This paper was originally craft paper. I went in with blue that ended up turning green and a darker blue with my favorite circle stencil. And then I actually stamped circles over top. You've seen this one. I used it in my August layout as well. And then that's a stamp. So I tend to do these art journal pieces as inspiration and testing and experimenting, and then taking that over to my bullet journal. I have done a video about that, so I'll link that up in the cards above for you. This is another example of the blue sea effect that I really love. This was done with the distress inks with these little guys, not with the oxide. And I went from a light blue into a darker blue into the darkest blue. And I used the circle stencil again, but I drew out the circles as well as layering, doing some blending with the stencil to create that extra visual interest in the piece. And then this is my other favorite layout that I used the galaxy effect, but I used greens and yellows and browns instead. And then for my border, I used a stamp to go in around the edges just to, again, make it more interesting. And this is actually a layout that I've never shared before. It was from August 2019, just before my youngest son was born. But I thought this would be fun to create a map with an island as the A and then water in the surrounding areas. It's kind of simple, but a lot of fun. This is a galaxy effect using orange, yellow, and black. So instead of the galaxy effect we just created, I did this instead with these colors. This is blended as well. I used 2 different colors to blend these in together. And there, of course, is the TARDIS that has the fun blue. This I did separately and then glued it in. Okay, you've seen this layout before as well. I wanted to point out how I created a bit of a gradient effect or an ombre effect. So going from light to dark and creating, again, that visual interest. And then this one, I don't think I've showed this one too much, but I wanted to show this one because of the background. This is all Distress Ink Oxide. This was Distress Ink Oxide and this is Distress Ink Oxide, and I just blended it in and masked off the areas that I didn't want the color in. So again, a lot of elbow grease, but it got done. Here is another one for you. I have also showed this one before. Again, I pulled elements from this into my August bullet journal setup for this year. And honestly, this is probably one of my favorite layouts I've ever done. So you're going to see more of this one. And this is another example of an ombre effect where around the hot tub, I wanted it to be light and give that idea of reflection. And then going up higher into the dark sky. And I used that same paint flick technique to create the stars, and I did that just by masking this off with sticky notes, again like you saw me do in my August plan with me. Okay, so those were the examples I wanted to share with you. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned some fun, interesting new ways to add color to your notebook. Thank you for joining me today.